On March 15, 1847, a scream echoed through the Virginia countryside unlike anything the residents of Cumberland County had ever heard. It was neither the cry of a slaughtered animal nor the wail of a woman in childbirth. According to sealed court documents discovered only decades later, something far more disturbing had occurred. 13 members of the Peton family were found dismembered inside their plantation home, arranged with a surgical precision that baffled investigators. The local sheriff's report, buried for over a century, described cuts so clean and methodical they appeared to be the work of someone with intimate knowledge of anatomy. Even more chilling was the prime suspect, a slave known only as Isaac, who had vanished without a trace. The evidence he left behind would make even seasoned lawmen question everything they thought they knew about the peculiar institution of slavery. Before we continue with the story of Isaac and the Peton plantation, if you're fascinated by these dark chapters of American history that were deliberately hidden from textbooks, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. We uncover the most disturbing secrets buried in our nation's past. Also, let me know in the comments what state you're listening from. I'm curious to see how far these forgotten stories reach. The events that transpired at Peton Grove would forever change how authorities in antebellum Virginia viewed the relationship between master and slave. Though the truth of what happened that March evening would remain locked away in courthouse vaults until long after the Civil War had ended, the spring of 1847 in Cumberland County, Virginia, was a land of contradictions. Tobacco fields stretched across rolling hills as far as the eye could see, creating a patchwork of green that spoke to the region's prosperity. Meandering through the countryside, the James River provided both transportation and the lifeblood for the plantations that dotted its banks. This was a place where genteel society flourished on the backs of enslaved labor, where plantation owners gathered for elaborate dinners while their human property toiled in the fields from sunrise to sunset. Peton Grove sat on nearly 2,000 acres of prime Virginia soil, about 15 miles southwest of the county seat of Cumberland Courthouse. The plantation had been in the Peton family for 3 generations. Built by Josiah Peton in the 1760s using wealth accumulated through tobacco cultivation and what locals euphemistically called agricultural investments, the main house was an imposing 3-story structure with white columns and wraparound porches. From its position atop a gentle rise, it commanded a view of the entire property. By 1847, the plantation was under the management of Cornelius Peton, Josiah's grandson, a man known throughout the county for his business acumen and his particular approach to managing enslaved workers. Unlike some of his neighbors who relied on overseers, Cornelius prided himself on maintaining direct control over every aspect of plantation life. He was a man of medium height with prematurely silver hair that he kept meticulously groomed and penetrating gray eyes. His wife, Margaret, was the daughter of a Richmond banking family, and together they had 4 children: Samuel, aged 22, Elizabeth, 19, Thomas, 16, and young Mary, just 12. The Peton household also included Cornelius's elderly mother, Prudence, who at 78 still maintained strict oversight of the domestic arrangements, and Margaret's unmarried sister, Catherine, who had come to live with the family after their father's death the previous year. Completing the extended family was Cornelius's younger brother, Dr. Jonathan Pemberton, a physician who had studied in Philadelphia before returning to Virginia to establish his practice. Jonathan frequently stayed at the plantation when treating patients in the rural areas of the county. What set the Peton plantation apart from others in the region was not just its size or productivity, but the unusual background of its workforce. While Cornelius had inherited 43 enslaved individuals, over the years he had acquired several others under circumstances that raised eyebrows among his peers. Cornelius had a peculiar habit, unlike most slaveholders who purchased their labor from established markets, of acquiring individuals whom other owners had deemed problematic or unmanageable. It was through this practice that Isaac came to Peton Grove in the autumn of 1844. The man, who would later be known throughout Virginia by a far more sinister name, had originally belonged to a plantation in neighboring Prince Edward County, where he had worked in the slaughterhouse. His previous owner, a man named Fielding Crawford, had been eager to sell Isaac after what he described in correspondence as incidents of an increasingly disturbing nature. Isaac was a man of imposing physical presence, standing well over 6 feet tall with broad shoulders and hands that seemed disproportionately large even for his frame. His most striking feature was his eyes, a pale grey that seemed almost colourless in certain light, giving him an unsettling gaze that made even hardened overseers uncomfortable. He spoke little, preferring to communicate through nods and gestures, though those who worked alongside him noted that his silence wasn't born of ignorance, but of careful observation. His exceptional skill with a blade made Isaac particularly valuable to plantation owners. He could dress a hog in half the time it took most men, his knife work so precise that he wasted virtually no meat. His knowledge of anatomy was encyclopedic. He knew exactly where to cut to separate joints, how to remove organs without puncturing them, and how to preserve meat for long-term storage. These skills had made him indispensable at his previous plantation, despite the growing unease his presence seemed to generate. The incidents that had prompted Crawford to sell Isaac were never fully documented in official records, but whispered accounts spoke of livestock found butchered with unnecessary brutality, their remains arranged in ways that served no practical purpose. Rumors also circulated of Isaac being found standing over freshly slaughtered animals long after his work should have been completed, his clothes spotless as if he had performed his duties without getting a single drop of blood on himself. When Cornelius Peyton acquired Isaac in 1844, he believed he was getting a bargain, a skilled laborer at a fraction of the usual cost. Crawford had been so eager to complete the sale that he accepted nearly 30% less than Isaac's assessed value, requiring only that Peyton promised never to sell Isaac back to any plantation in Prince Edward County. For nearly 3 years, Isaac worked at Peyton Grove without incident. He was assigned to manage the plantation's meat production, overseeing the slaughter of livestock and the preservation of meat for both the family's consumption and sale to neighboring properties. By his own preference, he worked alone in a building constructed specifically for this purpose about 200 yards from the main house. The slaughterhouse was a sturdy brick structure with thick walls and few windows, designed to keep the interior cool even during Virginia's oppressive summers. Inside, Isaac had arranged his tools with military precision, knives of every size and shape hanging from wooden pegs, sharpening stones positioned at exact intervals, and a collection of cleavers that he maintained with obsessive care. Despite the nature of the work performed there, the building was always immaculately clean, leading some to wonder how Isaac managed to leave no usual signs of his profession. The morning of March 15, 1847, began like any other at Peyton Grove. The early spring air carried the scent of tobacco seedlings and the promise of another profitable growing season. In the kitchen garden, Margaret Peyton was directing the preparation of beds for vegetables that would feed the plantation's inhabitants through the coming months. The children were at their lessons with their tutor, Professor Aldrich, who came from Richmond twice weekly to ensure they received an education befitting their social station. Cornelius had spent the morning in his study, reviewing accounts and correspondence with factors in Richmond regarding the upcoming tobacco auction. The numbers were encouraging, the previous year's crop had commanded premium prices, and early indicators suggested this year would be even better. By his calculations, the plantation was positioned to generate more profit in 1847 than in any previous year. It was Dr. Jonathan Peyton who first noticed something amiss. He had arrived at the plantation the previous evening to treat several enslaved workers, who had developed symptoms of what appeared to be influenza. As was his custom, he had planned to examine the patients again before departing for his next calls. However, when he approached the quarters shortly after noon, he found them eerily quiet. The doctor's first instinct was that the patients were resting, but as he drew closer, he became aware of an unusual odor, not the typical smells, but something sharper, more metallic. It was then that he noticed the door to Isaac's cabin standing open, swaying slightly in the afternoon breeze. This was unusual, as Isaac was known for his preference for privacy. More disturbing were the dark stains on the wooden threshold that looked disturbingly similar to dried blood. Dr. Peyton approached the cabin with growing apprehension. His medical training had exposed him to blood in many forms, and he recognized the distinctive color and pattern of these stains. They suggested something far more serious than a minor injury. Pushing the door fully open, the doctor peered into the cabin's dim interior. What he saw defied immediate comprehension. The usually Spartan room had been transformed into something resembling a macabre exhibition. Isaac's few personal possessions had been arranged with geometric precision, but it was what hung from the cabin's rafters that caused Dr. Peyton to stumble backward in horror. Suspended from rope that appeared to have been measured and cut with mathematical precision were what initially appeared to be sides of pork or beef. But as the doctor's eyes adjusted, he realized with growing revulsion that these were not animal remains. The cuts were too precise, the proportions unmistakably human. Dr. Peaton's hands shook as he backed away, his medical training warring with his instinct to flee. He had seen death in many forms, but nothing had prepared him for the clinical precision with which these remains had been prepared. Each cut appeared to have been made with surgical accuracy. What disturbed him most was not just the presence of human remains, but their condition. There was no sign of struggle. The cuts were clean and methodical, suggesting that whoever had performed this work had taken considerable time and care, approaching the human body with the same professional detachment as when butchering livestock. The doctor's legs barely carried him back toward the main house, his mind struggling to process what he had witnessed. As he stumbled across the grounds, he became aware of other disturbing details. The usual sounds of plantation life were absent. No voices called from the fields, no children played, no cooking fires sent smoke curling into the afternoon sky. When Dr. Peaton reached the main house, he found the front door standing ajar, another wrong detail, as Margaret Peaton was meticulous about security. Calling out for his brother, he received no response. The house was unnaturally quiet. Moving through the ground floor rooms, he found signs of normal daily life abruptly interrupted. In the dining room, the table was set for the midday meal, but the food remained untouched, congealing on china plates. In the parlor, Margaret's needlework lay abandoned on her favorite chair, the needle still trailing a length of blue silk thread. It was at the foot of the main staircase that Dr. Peaton made the discovery that would haunt him for the remainder of his life. Dark stains, similar to those at Isaac's cabin, traced a path up the carpeted stairs, suggesting something heavy had been dragged from the upper floors. The scene that greeted Dr. Jonathan Peaton on the upper floors of the Peaton mansion would be burned into his memory forever. In Cornelius's private study, the doctor found his brother's body arranged in a manner that defied all understanding. Cornelius sat in his leather chair behind his mahogany desk, his hands positioned as if writing, but his head had been removed with surgical precision and placed on the desktop like a grotesque paperweight. The clinical nature of the arrangement was what disturbed Dr. Peaton most profoundly. There were no signs of struggle. The room appeared normal, except for the impossible presence of his brother's severed head. Moving through the house in a state approaching shock, the doctor discovered that every member of the household had met a similar fate. Margaret was found in the master bedroom, positioned as if arranging flowers, her body upright but her head placed among the blooms. The children were in the nursery, arranged in a circle as if playing a game, their heads placed in the center facing inward. Old Prudence was in her rocking chair on the back porch, positioned as if watching the sunset, her severed head on a small table beside her. Catherine was in the kitchen, apparently in the midst of preparing bread, her head placed on the wooden cutting board. What made the scene even more disturbing was the complete absence of blood throughout the house. Despite the obvious violence, there were no spatters on walls, no pools on floors. It was as if each person had been killed elsewhere and then carefully positioned. Dr. Peaton's medical training allowed him to observe chilling details. The cuts on each body were identical in their precision, made by someone with extensive anatomical knowledge. The wound edges were clean, suggesting extremely sharp instruments wielded by steady hands. Most disturbing of all, there were no defensive wounds on any of the victims. Each appeared to have been killed by a single precise cut to the neck made from behind with surgical accuracy, suggesting the victims had been unaware of their attacker's approach. When Cumberland County Sheriff Thomas Hawthorne arrived the following morning, summoned by Dr. Peaton's frantic midnight ride, he brought with him 2 deputies and the county coroner. What they found challenged every assumption about criminal behavior from their combined experience. Sheriff Hawthorne was a man of considerable experience, but the scene at Petton Grove was unlike anything in his 20 years of law enforcement. The sheriff's initial focus was on how one person could have killed 13 individuals without raising an alarm. The house showed no signs of forced entry. More puzzling was how the bodies had been moved without leaving blood trails. Coroner William Fitzgerald's examination confirmed Dr. Peaton's observations about the precision of the wounds. Each victim had been killed by a single cut that severed arteries and veins with surgical accuracy. What troubled Fitzgerald most was the condition of the bodies. Despite having been deceased for at least 12 hours, they showed none of the usual signs of decomposition. The skin remained pink and warm, and the blood appeared to have been completely drained. The investigation quickly focused on the enslaved population, both because of the violence against slaveholders and because several individuals were missing. Along with Isaac, 3 others could not be accounted for: Moses, a field hand, Sarah, a kitchen servant, and Peter, who had assisted Isaac. However, when the slave quarters were searched, the assumptions were complicated. Moses was discovered in his cabin, apparently having died in his sleep. Sarah was found in the kitchen garden, her body positioned as if working. Peter was in the slaughterhouse, arranged as if cleaning equipment. Like the Peton family, all 3 had been decapitated with the same surgical precision. The search for Isaac intensified as he remained the only unaccounted-for resident. His cabin was thoroughly searched, revealing the disturbing tableau. Closer examination revealed additional details. Hidden beneath loose floorboards, investigators found a collection of journals written in a careful, educated hand. The entries, dating back nearly 3 years, detailed Isaac's observations of life at Petton Grove with a clinical detachment that chilled even seasoned lawmen. He had recorded the daily routines of every resident, noting their habits, fears, and vulnerabilities. Sheriff Hawthorne recognized the significance of these documents and arranged for Professor Marcus Aldrich, the children's tutor, to assist in interpreting them. The journals proved to be the key to understanding the methodical horror. They revealed a mind that had been planning for months, possibly years. The earliest entries were benign observations, but they showed an analytical mind observing human behavior with the detachment of a scientist. A disturbing progression became apparent. Isaac's observations gradually shifted from recording to active experimentation. He tested reactions to subtle changes in routine. One entry described moving objects to observe if family members would notice. Another detailed his observations of the family's sleeping patterns, revealing an intimate knowledge gained through careful surveillance. The journals also contained detailed anatomical drawings that demonstrated extensive knowledge of human physiology, suggesting formal training that seemed impossible for an enslaved person. Professor Aldrich's investigation into Isaac's background revealed disturbing inconsistencies. While his previous owner claimed Isaac was born on his plantation, records showed no birth certificate. Elderly enslaved people there claimed no memory of Isaac before 1842. Inquiries revealed more mysteries. Dr. Samuel Hutchinson, a physician who had treated workers on Crawford's plantation, remembered Isaac for his exceptional medical knowledge, particularly in anatomy and surgical technique. Hutchinson recalled Isaac's complete detachment during medical procedures, finding his presence increasingly unsettling. The investigation also revealed that Isaac's departure from Crawford's plantation had been more urgent than described. Local records showed 3 enslaved individuals had died under mysterious circumstances beforehand. Dr. Hutchinson's private notes suggested he suspected their true cause. Each had a small, precise puncture wound behind the left ear. Sheriff Hawthorne's expanded investigation discovered Isaac had moved through Virginia's plantation system like a predator. Records showed a plantation owner named Benjamin Curtis had briefly owned Isaac before selling him after several valuable enslaved workers died under suspicious circumstances, each with a nearly invisible wound behind the left ear. Curtis had found Isaac standing over a body holding a thin, pointed instrument, calmly explaining he was studying the effects of death. The mounting evidence created a sense of urgency. If Isaac was responsible for numerous deaths, his disappearance was a major threat. The investigation took a dramatic turn when Dr. Peton received an unexpected visitor, Samuel Woodson, a free black blacksmith from Farmville. Woodson claimed to have known Isaac years earlier, before his enslavement. According to Woodson, Isaac had not been born into slavery but had been a free man in Philadelphia named Isaac Thornton, working as an assistant to a prominent anatomist, Dr. Marcus Whitfield. Woodson claimed Isaac's interest had evolved into unauthorized experiments on corpses for artistic possibilities. After being dismissed, corpses went missing, and bodies were found arranged in macabre poses. Woodson believed Isaac was captured by slave catchers while fleeing south. This account explained Isaac's knowledge and skills. If true, his years of bondage might have transformed a scholarly interest in death into something vengeful. The investigation received additional urgency with reports of similar incidents on other plantations, livestock arranged disturbingly, enslaved workers found with puncture wounds, and a family disappearing after being stalked. Sheriff Hawthorne organized a massive manhunt, but Isaac proved elusive. Professor Aldrich's continued analysis of the journals revealed increasingly disturbing insights. The later entries showed Isaac planning the massacre as his final experiment, an exploration of the aesthetic possibilities of mass mortality. He viewed it as an artistic statement. The journals also contained cryptic references to disciples, suggesting he was part of a larger network. Just when we thought we'd seen it all, the horror in Cumberland County intensifies. If this story is giving you chills, share this video with a friend who loves dark mysteries. Hit that like button to support our content, and don't forget to subscribe to never miss stories like this. Let's discover together what happens next. The breakthrough came from Father O'Sullivan, an Irish priest. He reported encountering a group of itinerant preachers led by a tall man with pale eyes who discussed death with anatomical knowledge and described creating living sculptures with human bodies. The priest's description matched Isaac, and the group was headed to Powhatan County for a revival meeting. Before Sheriff Hawthorne could depart, word came from Colonel William Randolph in Powhatan, requesting assistance with a horrific crime. The scene at the Randolph plantation exceeded the horrors of Petton Grove. The mansion had been transformed into a gallery of death. In the parlor, 17 family members were arranged as at a dinner party, their severed heads on plates. In the ballroom, 32 enslaved individuals were arranged in dancing poses, their heads swapped with those of family members. The precision spoke to days of work and assistance from multiple individuals. Evidence showed Isaac's methodology had evolved. Some victims showed signs of having been kept alive initially. A hidden root cellar had been converted into a surgical suite, with instruments and notes describing experiments on living subjects to prolong awareness during dying. Maps of neighboring plantations were found, with a timeline for attacks through the summer of 1847. The next target was the Carrington plantation, scheduled for the following evening. Sheriff Hawthorne issued a warning and organized the largest manhunt in Virginia's history. The decision was made to use the Carrington plantation as bait, allowing a dinner party to proceed under heavy, concealed security. Colonel Carrington, a military veteran, insisted on maintaining normal routines. The attack came unexpectedly from beneath the house. Isaac and 3 disciples emerged through tunnels. Isaac's appearance had changed dramatically. He now had an expression of religious ecstasy. The attack was prolonged, designed for psychological impact. Isaac held the guests captive, engaging them in philosophical discussions about death as an artistic medium, explaining his work as creating beauty. From outside, Dr. Peaton observed that Isaac had developed a full intellectual framework to justify his crimes. The standoff lasted nearly 2 hours until Colonel Carrington signaled that the attackers were positioned for a coordinated takedown. The assault was swift. Officers breached the dining room from 3 directions. Isaac was shot dead before he could react, and his disciples were neutralized seconds later. Isaac's death ended the immediate threat, but the investigation revealed a campaign of terror spanning years and potentially over 100 victims. Correspondence revealed a network of disciples across the Southeast. The psychological impact was profound, altering security measures and social relationships across the region. The official report, sealed and classified, concluded that Isaac's true identity remained a mystery. It speculated he might have been an educated man who deliberately entered the slave system. Most troubling was the conclusion that his campaign might have been the beginning of a larger movement, with similar individuals operating elsewhere. The case highlighted the vulnerabilities of the plantation system and demonstrated that the capacity for systematic, intelligent evil exists within humanity. This mystery shows us how easily evil can hide behind the facade of normalcy. The greatest monsters are often those who appear most rational. What do you think of this story? Do you believe everything was revealed about Isaac's true identity and motives? Leave your comment below and let me know which historical mysteries from your area you'd like us to investigate next. If you enjoyed this tale and want more horror stories like this, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share with someone who loves mysteries. The darkest chapters of American history are often the ones that were deliberately hidden. And together, we'll continue uncovering the secrets that powerful people tried to bury forever. See you in the next video.